I was reading, I've been reading a book called Exit the Cave by Blaine Hogan. Really interesting book. I was on my way into the office when I was listening to this one chapter, and he was talking about trapeze flying. And he was talking about how trapeze artists, right? They never fly without a net. So he was relaying this conversation that he had with a trapeze artist because he was doing things that scared him. He had asked, he was like, does the net ever break? Or do you ever have to replace it? She was like, no, like never. He was like, well, doesn't it like tear at all? You know, you fall from like 25 feet, right? And she said, you know, it's funny that we do have to make repairs sometimes, but the interesting thing is that wherever we make the repair, that's usually the strongest part of the entire net. And it made me think how that is also so very true of the work that we do, of the work that I do. When we try to understand, where did we come from? How did I get here? When we begin to ask the questions, the hard questions, and doing the hard work, or doing the work like we like to say in therapy, you know, those are the areas that become the strongest part of the tapestry, if you will, of our lives. The opposite's true too, I guess, right? That if you don't make the repairs necessary when something is broken or something is breaking, that will be the weakest part. That's where things will continue to unravel. But then if you like zoom out of that, right, it's almost like, well, there's probably a lot of us who are doing life or flying without a net. And that's kind of what Blaine was talking about. He's like, wow, I spent most of my life in my addiction of trying to outrun kind of like what he referred to as like the sins of his father, of growing up in an alcoholic home, and had no safety net, had nowhere to return to, had no anchor point. And so as he was kind of like talking about this conversation, he was like, what does it mean to have a safety net? What does it mean to actually have friends who want to show up for you? Right? Like, what does it mean to actually have an anchoring of sorts, whether that's a faith practice, a spiritual practice, something that you return to when literally shit hits the fan. And what happens when we take the time necessary to mend the parts of that tapestry that are breaking, that are pulling apart, that are unraveling. And I think that that's the work of therapy, right? Of coaching, of taking time to better understand, how did this happen? What do I need to do to reinforce these layers so that this doesn't happen again? So that this can become the strongest part and not the continual weak point in the tapestry. And I thought that was so striking, because I know that that's certainly been true in my life, that the parts of my story, when they begin to unravel and I feel like I've hit rock bottom, or I feel like this surely has to be the worst, when I take the time to understand, how did I get here? How does this help me understand my past? And how is this moving me into a different trajectory than what I thought I was originally going? When I begin to ask those questions and I'm open and curious as to what might come, those have become huge anchor points. Not to say that I never struggle, not to say that bad stuff never happens, no. But they're not nearly as weak as what they would have been if I hadn't have taken the time to notice that. And so, you know, I guess the question to ask is, what needs mending in your life, in your world, in your tapestry, in your net? What are you avoiding? What are you hoping just doesn't give out? Even though you see it every time you fall, you're like, ooh, right? What needs mending?